It's another edition of the Best Coast Sports Connection. Andy Bishop, Brian Vilvin, Thomas Conroy. Hello,
Howdy.
gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello, Randy.
It's another edition, episode 10
Yeah.
here at McGregor's in
Double
Mission Valley.
digits.
Double digits, baby. Thanks for joining the ride here.
Yeah, McGregor's has been an unbelievably gracious host for us. They let us set up shop wherever we want, take over the restaurant anytime. We've got our first audience today, Andy. Oh, man. Oh, baby.
Who's in the house here?
We got a couple of Vilvins in the house. Shauna Vilvin, Bob Vilvin. They'll be the peanut gallery, so if you hear anybody yelling some things just like that, then that's who is at fault here. But they're enjoying the great food and delicious drink here at McGregor's.
They
Can't
just
go
asked
wrong.
us to close down.
Like, okay, you guys are done bringing too many people here.
Early plug here for some action tomorrow night.
Yum.
We've got some Aztecs football, just quarter mile, half mile away from us right here.
Yeah, I mean,
Vilvin rocking the SDSU shirt.
Thomas will know because he's going to be here tomorrow pre-gaming before the Aztec game. We're heading over to the Q or whatever the hell it's even called.
Estimated arrival time at
I think
4:30.
it's San Diego County Credit Union.
SDCCU Stadium, yeah.
There we go.
That's embarrassing. That's also a mouthful. But Thomas, yeah, you're getting here 4:30.
Yes, I'll be here
That's
at
when the pre-party
4:30.
starts.
Get a little pregame action, and then head on over to watch the Aztec with another victory.
I know. I got the Aztecs too. You picked the Aztecs this week? Oh, Bob Vilvin going with Utah State in our pool that we're in.
Ooh.
The Aggies are a 2.5-point favorite on the road at San Diego State. Second best offense in the country. Jordan Love, their junior quarterback, is a big-time NFL prospect. So I know Utah State's getting a lot of love for that. But I got the Aztecs, baby. I think they're going to hold home field and come out with a big win. Go to 4-0 and get people in this town buzzing about Aztecs football.
Yeah, I totally see that too. We've seen them win a variety of games this year,
Yep.
sticking close with their opponents. Maybe not the prettiest of wins at times, but
Yep.
I'm confident in them tomorrow night.
I agree.
Yeah, last week their number one back was out, Washington, and Bell and Rhodes simply threw it down the throat of New Mexico State in an impressive win. Just a lot of ground football. It was pretty exciting.
It was. They Ryan Agnew threw for 100 and
Like
100 and
80
something yards. We've been talking about wanting to get a 300-yard passer because they haven't had one in a decade. He wasn't close this last week.
No.
He ended at 294 the week before, 296, I think. So maybe tomorrow. Got to air it out a little bit against a high-powered offense. I think we see a 300-yard passer for the Aztecs.
Ooh.
Oh, baby.
Love it. So you talked about the pick, whether it's SCSU or Utah State. Yep. So picking games is basically what's keeping us alive here at the Best Coast Sports Connection.
It sure is.
Notably with NFL picks and our survivor pool.
Yep.
Let's take a small trip back to last week when there were some exciting games. Did you pick the Ravens, Brian,
I did.
in that close game against the Cardinals?
Yeah.
What was your thought process on Sunday as that game was transpiring?
Well, I had a baseball game in the morning, and right when the game ended, I immediately checked the scores to see what was going on. And at the time, the Ravens kind of had it under control. They were up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, but the Cardinals did what they've been doing all year long, and they mounted a late comeback. So they come out of nowhere. They don't do anything for 3 quarters and then play really well in the fourth. So I was sweating it out a little bit, but not as bad as the week before where the Seahawks couldn't do anything right against the Bengals. But alas, after 2 weeks, still alive here in the survivor pool. This week, I'm not messing around. I think the game I'm picking is going to be well in hand. So feel a little better this week.
Well, I felt a little bit like that last week with my Patriots. They were only my Patriots for 1 week. Going against the Dolphins, we had talked about their history the last several years in Miami, but I felt differently about the two teams this year. And it was pretty close early on in the second half, but then things unfolded and the Pats win 43-0. So
you didn't sweat much?
that happened. I also, in my other Survivor League, I was going back and forth. I had the Ravens originally, and then I was doubting that. Then I went to the Texans. And then I ultimately made an 11th hour decision, and I picked the Chiefs. So I felt very good this past Sunday about my survival picks.
Yep.
I probably have a little bit too much pride going into this week, so hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me in the weeks coming. Thomas, who was your pick last Sunday?
It was Baltimore, and in my other survivor pool, I picked Houston, and so I was put in a hospital after those 2 games because it's just too much stress for a human body to handle.
That Jaguars 2-point conversion at the end of that Houston game looked like we were about to lose about 20% of the pool on that play.
Yeah,
it was darn close,
a
too.
handoff to Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
He makes that spin. If he reaches the ball over, he maybe crosses the goal line. So
Yeah.
10 people, I think, in our Survivor League still alive, 6 inches away from losing their life.
That's how it works, though. That's exciting. That's why I love this thing. I never done it before, but already in 2 weeks, I've seen how exciting it makes the end of these games, and I'm glad we're
do
doing
you guys
it.
like that aspect of going for 2 instead of kicking the extra point and going to overtime?
I do. I mean, it's a 50-50 proposition probably. I mean, I'm sure the statistics are slightly different, but especially if you're the road team.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against a divisional opponent, that's probably going to be your best option, chancing it like that as opposed to taking them on in overtime.
Yeah, I go back to thinking about when we were fans, and as a Charger fan, if we were in a game and someone scored a touchdown and then they have to kick the extra point to tie it, I was always terrified if they went for 2 because you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose after all this. It happened. The Chargers did it to the Chiefs last year, where they won the game.
Yes.
They went for the win on the road at Kansas City. I think being on the road may have something to do with it, but yeah, I was always terrified as a fan of the team that had the lead going in. So I think I'm a fan of going for 2, and I don't think any player has ever been mad at coach for going for 2 and for the win in that situation. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or lose.
It's a win-win or lose. That's a great line right there. That I'm clipping that clip and putting it on social media.
All right, so this week, we both said we feel good about our picks.
Sure.
We got a couple of astronomical lines where normally lines of 22 and 22.5 are reserved for college football, but this week the Cowboys are playing the Dolphins, which if you want to stay in the survivor pool, probably just pick against the Dolphins every single week, even though I think
But
they're going to
then
win
at some point. They play the
I know.
divisional
Oh,
opponent
gosh.
again, and you can't go there.
And you can't pick them. But this week, the Cowboys being a 22.5-point favorite over the Dolphins. I know that'll be a hot pick for people. Some people have already picked the Cowboys.
Bobby
so they
Bilvin.
can't. Shauna picked them already, so she can't go on that train. But the other big point spread is 22 points New England is getting at home, or New England's given up at home.
Mm-hmm.
New England has been the best team in the NFL so far this season, and they're playing against a Jets team on the road. The Jets will be starting a rookie quarterback who, as of 10 days ago, was on the practice squad.
Yeah.
They have no chance in Foxborough. The Patriots are going to roll them. So I think there's 2 pretty safe bets if you have the Patriots or the Cowboys available this week. One of those 2.
Yeah, I would guess. I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but probably 80 to 90% of the survivors are going to take those 2 teams. Even though those 2 teams look to be playoff teams.
Yep.
Division winners likely, or at least the Patriots for sure. But they do have a lot of future value, you know? So that's where it starts messing with your head.
Well, this is why I claimed at the beginning, and I'm going to stick with it, I'm not worrying about future value. I'm just going with which team is going to win this week. And I thought my pick both times has been pretty good, and both times the team was really close, and I almost lost it. So I've been feeling really good going in with my week-to-week thing, and it hasn't – I mean, it's panned out because I've won, but I'm sticking with it. I'm actually going with the Patriots this week. I'll let everybody know. I'll waste them right now because I know this game they will win, and I want to survive till next week.
What about you, Thomas?
Well, I'm going to stay away from the battle of the 199th pick because Brady was that pick in 2000 and Luke Falk was in 2018. So I'm going to stay away from that game because the contest is just going to be way too much. But Andy mentioned it last week, and I'm sticking with his idea of just going whoever plays the Dolphins, and I'm going with the Cowboys this week. So that they should be like at 30-0 by halftime. So.
Yeah.
The Dolphins are pretty much a community college team. It's pretty embarrassing the way they play.
Yeah, it's been a long time, or several years since you've seen a team that bad. Maybe you go back a few years with the Browns. I think I'm going with the Cowboys too. Playing the Dolphins. I really want to stay. Oh, I already picked the Patriots. I want to keep the Cowboys, but I don't feel confident enough in any of the other games. Initially, I like the Packers at home against the Broncos.
That's what Finbar's chiming in on the Facebook comments and said he's
Sure.
taking the Packers. So,
And then the
One
other one
vote.
is the Vikings against the Raiders. 9-point favorite there. The thing that cautions me against that, or I would caution anybody else in the league against, is that the Vikings had this similar type matchup last year. Week 3, Vikings at home against the Buffalo Bills, who were terrible last year. The Vikings lose like 28-12 at home, and that knocked out like 75%
Wow.
of the survivors that were in my league last year.
so that's going
So
to be
just
the.
be weary of the Vikings at home against the Raiders.
I think this year that pick is Cowboys at home to the Dolphins. That's the one that's going to lose. Josh Rosen's going to get his first start with the Dolphins and lead them to the most miraculous victory ever. 22.5 points. I've never seen a line like that in the NFL.
Not in the
That's
NFL,
embarrassing.
No.
And to have two 22-point lines, that's embarrassing for the Jets and the Dolphins. But the Jets, at least their quarterback's out. They have the excuse. The
Yeah.
Dolphins, my goodness.
No, that's bad. If the Cowboys somehow miraculously lose that game, I will eternally hate them. They knocked me out of my league last year. I always kind of didn't really like them. You know, they
Yeah.
were America's team, kind of the flamboyant team. If that were to happen this week, I would never be able to forgive them.
Oh, I hope it doesn't happen for your sake, but yeah.
So we got some of the Vilvins in the house ordering some food
Yeah,
and
we
drink
got some
here
food.
at
Looks good.
Gregor's. I can smell that from over here.
Is that a Philly cheesesteak?
Lunch break.
What do we got over there?
Cheeseburgers and fries.
Oh, a couple cheeseburgers. Oh,
Ooh, the
lunch
lunch
combo.
combo.
The lunch combo. McGregor's special, baby.
Fries and a beer. $14.
Burger, fries, and a beer. $12. Wow.
That sounds.
We've been doing it
amazing
all
right now.
wrong. We needed them to come in and show us what's good.
Look at the Dolphins go 0-17 to match their 17-year-old.
They get to play one extra game just to try to match that. They don't play in
They
the
play
bye week.
against
They
the,
play against themselves in the bye week and they lose.
Yeah, I was gonna say they play against the national champion.
Clemson smokes them. Clemson will be a 22.5-point favorite. Oh man.
Okay, so you mentioned the Jets starting quarterback,
Yeah.
Mr. Falk. Injury bug was the storyline of last week.
Yeah.
Darnold out with mononucleosis. Big Ben out for the season. Breeze with the thumb injury out for, I think, maybe 6 weeks roughly. Is
I
the
also heard
guesstimate.
someone say 12 weeks with
Oh.
him. The guess is 6, but someone with some expertise in that injury said it could be closer to 12 as like a realistic time frame. So, I mean, you're talking about half the season to 2/3 of the season at a minimum. That's rough.
Could be the perfect time though for the Saints. You get Breeze rejuvenated at 40 years old, and he could be a top physical performance level for the stretch if they needed to get in the playoffs.
So it's like the innings limit for pitchers in baseball. Verlander, you're just going to pitch a couple times at the beginning of the year and then take about 4 months off and then come back for September and October.
Did you guys catch that Rams Saints game at all? A
Yeah.
rematch
Yeah, I
of
did.
last
Watched
year's
most of
NFC
it.
Championship game?
Yeah. That was the one I watched.
Yeah, I did too. I think I watched the whole thing. So you just see the difference without Breeze.
Yeah.
And then there was that play as well, Cam Jordan with the fumble recovery, taking it back for the touchdown,
Yeah,
but
that
the
was
whistle
brutal.
was called. That's the call I hate the most, is when they blow it dead.
Yeah.
Even when it's a questionable play,
Yeah.
the other team can always challenge it, and it can be reversed. But when you blow that whistle and it screws up a big play like that, I hate that.
Yeah, and that changed the entire dynamic of that game. The Saints hadn't been able to get it going on offense, and they had an opportunity there to get a big defensive scoop and score, take the lead, and instead it gets erased because, like you said, the official blew an early whistle. And yeah, you hate to see that, and especially when it impacts a game like that. But the thing you hate to see most is Drew Brees on the sideline. You were talking about the rest of the quarterbacks that have gone down this last week, including like Nick Foles.
Yeah.
yeah, it was a brutal week for starting quarterbacks.
Sure. So I mentioned the penalties during last night's game. Not sure if you watched any of it at all, but apparently Tom Brady was tweeting throughout the game, which I think Brady just got onto Twitter like a year ago, if I recall. But he was tweeting at how the refs were basically jokes out there, making some pretty terrible calls. He even said in the second half that he was going to stop watching the game because of how bad the refs were. What are your
shots fired?
What are your thoughts on the referees this year and how they've been making some interesting calls, I guess is how I would put it.
It's been pretty
thumbs down
soft,
from Bob
man.
Billman.
And I thought that it was bad on the quarterbacks. Like, guys just touch a quarterback and they get whistled for a penalty. But we saw it in the Bears-Broncos game where that stud outside or defensive end for the Bears tackled a running back and tackled him a little too hard, they say, or threw him down. Contacted a guy in a contact sport, which is against the rules these days. It happened to a Jets player over the weekend as well. So, yeah, it's pretty brutal, and I feel bad for defensive players. I don't know if they're just doing it to sway things in favor of the offense or if it's a concussion-related concern, but it's pretty brutal. It's pretty ridiculous, and to have someone like Tom Brady do it and have the platform that he has, I feel like he can say something and it'll move the needle. Random defensive player on team we don't know isn't going to move the needle on that, but Tom Brady will, so I'm glad he said something.
Yeah.
And if you notice, after his tweet, there was no penalties called in the third quarter. So we really know who runs the league. It's not Roger Goodell. It's Tom Brady.
But what was the PSI level of the balls? That's what I want to know.
Exactly.
Very
man.
low, very low.
So we were talking about this before we went on. We had a couple of fantasy interests in that game.
Yep.
That was a messy game. Some of these AFC and NFC South games, when they're being played in Florida, or especially here in the South, there's always the rain component, and
Yeah.
we saw that last week with the Bucks and Panthers, as well as this week. I had Leonard Fournette, and at one point he had 11 carries for -8 yards. I mean, part of it's the offensive line as well, but then he broke off a 70-yard run, thankfully. And I had Delaney Walker too. Did you have anybody going, Vilvin?
I had Delaney Walker, and we got super bailed out by that last drive, making 3 catches for 20-something yards to kind of salvage what had been a pretty slow day for him. Up to that point, he had 4 catches for 49 yards, and on the final drive, he almost doubled his scoring output for the game. Mariota missed him on a couple of would-be touchdowns where he was fairly open, so that would have totally changed the dynamic of him there. And I was also playing against the Jags defense, which had 9 sacks, an interception, 7 points against, so they were on fire. So I needed Delaney Walker to do something. And I was cringing every single time Mariota dropped back to pass. The Jags brought the house and got to him 9 times. I don't recall seeing that many sacks in a game in a really long time. So, yeah,
I'm
that
so
was
thankful I didn't watch the game last night because those two teams are the two of the most boringest teams in the NFL. I mean, I would rather watch paint dry than those two teams. I mean, there's like nobody on their team, and the only thing I really miss is I heard that Aikman was really opinionated last night about the referees, and I missed all that. But I caught up with Twitter on how he was going off. But other than that, I don't think I missed much in that one.
Well, what about Gardner Minshew?
I was just going to say.
You're not into the mustache, man? I almost shaved a mustache today just to rep Gardner Minshew, but I probably would have gotten in
Not
a lot
only
of trouble
Gardner
at home.
Minshew, but Gardner Minshew the second. I don't know how that name is
Yeah.
worth replicating.
Well,
And his dad is Flynn, I believe. Flint.
well, that's what they call him, yeah.
Yeah.
But they were thinking about naming him Beowulf, so then they started calling him Beowulf last night too. The guy is like a legend. It's hilarious.
I think he was a 6th-round pick, I want to say. And before I started watching the game, I was following Twitter, and people were saying like he's the greatest quarterback, he's the greatest 6th-round pick to ever play in the NFL. And I think a lot of it was sarcastic, is my guess. But I think from what I heard, he looked decent. And maybe he's a mobile quarterback that can make some plays, but
Yeah, but mostly
not
he has a
sure.
mustache.
Yeah.
Like I think that in his
I
best
did
swag.
watch
and-
his game against Kansas City. I thought he played pretty well against a pretty good team. I thought he held his own, but I never thought he would be on fire like this of late. He's really like the story of the league in the first 3 weeks.
He's got to take advantage of it too, because you never know how long it's going to last. And teams were not preparing for Gardner Minshew before the season started. But he was a really productive college player, led the nation in passing. And I heard him in an interview last week talking about what drove him to go to Washington State. And he said that Mike Leach pitched him and said, "You could go play for a national championship at Alabama, or you can lead the nation in passing for me." So he's like, "All right, I'll go there. Let's go throw it around." And
Right.
yeah,
Sign
the
me
guy-
up for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Random thought of the day. Speaking of Washington State,
Yep.
I was watching ESPN the other day, and guess who was on as a college football analyst?
Not Ryan Leaf.
Ryan Leaf.
Really?
Oh yeah.
He was standing right
That
next
guy's
to Linda
getting work?
Cohn.
Really?
Oh my
He was
goodness.
actually pretty good.
He probably was.
Mhm.
He kind of went through plenty of things, even after his time with the NFL, with substance abuse, and has actually led a pretty nice life in recovery after that. But there's still a little bit of that staying with us as
Oh yeah.
former Chargers fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do applaud him to getting his life in order. I mean, he was a disaster here. I don't think anybody cannot argue that. But
Yeah.
but like you said, Andy, his life was, he could have fallen off the edge and never come back. And to turn it around and I watched some of the game because I was curious to see how he would be on air, and I thought he was really good. And he's just a bust. But I guess we take it more personal because of the Chargers
Yeah,
situation. But I thought he did an excellent job, and and I just applaud him for turning his life around.
All right. Well, you guys have convinced me to give him a chance. So
Just
I'm
don't
glad.
let him become an NFL football
Yeah,
analyst.
oh my gosh, he's going to become the Monday Night Football
Oh, is he
analyst. Jeez.
I
that
feel like
revolving door.
Monday Night Football is just not what it used to be.
Well, how did they get such terrible
Terrible
matchups?
games. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Like, they used to, I feel like, have marquee matchups all the time. Now, is it like every single team has to play on Monday or something? Or like
Must
what?
be.
There must be some weird rules, because I feel like the Monday night matchups have been just dreadful.
Dreadful. And I guess we got spoiled with Tirico and Gruden. I would say
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
combo of broadcasters, but
Maybe
I
they
don't
could
know.
just make everything seem exciting, like Thomas watching paint dry of John Gruden's talking about it with Mike Tirico. Then he's like, "Oh, wow."
Well, I just can't take Booger McFarland telling me that Baker Mayfield throws a 5-yard pass and he's the next Brett Favre. I'm just like, come on now.
Well, at least he gets to sit in the booth now
Yeah.
instead
Yeah,
of on like
instead of
some weird
That's-
crate on the sideline. It's like, oh gosh, Monday Night Football. Bob Vilvin doesn't like it.
so the Browns, they've kind of been the darling of off-season talk
Yep.
with the addition of OBJ, who impressed on Monday night.
Yep.
What is your assessment of that team as they stand 1-1?
Well, I think they've got a really prime opportunity here to potentially be a playoff team. And if you asked me that 2 weeks ago, and people were talking about, oh, Browns for the playoffs, I still wasn't buying it. I didn't think they'd be able to get past both Baltimore and Pittsburgh in that division. But now with Big Ben being out for the year, I think it opens the door wide open for the Browns to potentially make a playoff run. I think there's 4 teams competing for the final 2 playoff spots in the AFC, and the Browns are one of them.
So so the locks have to be New England, Kansas City,
New England, Kansas City, and Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah, I think those 3 teams are clearly the class of their divisions, and I think they will be 3 of the teams. Then someone has to go from the AFC South. Probably the Texans. I think they have the best roster, but the Colts are, they're in there. But
At
I
9
think
and
that's just a
7.
one-team division. So then I think the Bills at 2-0 seem like the real deal. The Chargers make me want to barf.
Oh,
And the Browns, and then the last one, the Raiders, Andy. I think the Raiders, first of all, I think they have a chance to go on the road to Minnesota this week and have a really good showing. You were saying to stay away from that game. I'm saying I think the Raiders have a chance to win there. I'm not picking them, but I think they have a chance.
Slow
and
down.
I think they have an opportunity to potentially sneak into the playoffs.
You know what throws me up about the Raiders that I just found out the other day is they don't play another home game in Oakland until November.
Yeah.
That's
that
just
weird?
is like I don't know how how you get that scheduled like that, but to me it's just like if they go 500 in their stretch right now, yeah, I'll agree with you. They'll definitely. I just think that schedule, just constantly being on the road and having to play over in London is going to kind of end their chances of making the playoffs. But I am impressed with them. I agree with you, but I just think that schedule is just ridiculous.
They kept making a big deal about the fact that Chiefs-Raiders game that was played on Sunday was going to be the last game played with dirt on the
Yeah,
field.
yes.
Because when they get back home, the World Series will already be over. So even if the A's made it to the World Series, there would no longer be dirt on that field. And starting next year, no teams will share a stadium, so there will never be another football game played in a shared use facility with dirt on the field. Little stat there, little history stat.
Little history lesson.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the C word a couple minutes ago, that team that plays in Carson.
Yeah, I try not to.
I watched almost the entire game against the Lions.
Okay.
I'm in this phase right now where I've recovered a little bit from them leaving town. I'm definitely not cheering for them. I still have disdain for the owner, but I'm following them mostly for fantasy purposes. But that was the type of game where they lose 13 to
10?
10,
Yeah.
I want to say.
Yep.
That was quintessential Chargers. Fumble at the
Didn't that
goal
make you
line.
feel a little good,
Yes.
though?
Can't take that away from
Rivers
them.
throws up the ball into double coverage when they're close to the red zone.
Yep.
Two missed field goals by
A
a
punter.
punter that they had to put in.
Too cheap to go get another kicker.
It's like, how many terrible things can you do to throw away a win? But that's where I would still be frustrated a week later if I was still a Chargers
Oh,
fan.
yeah, big time. Chargers going to Charger.
And Melvin Gordon tweeted during the game with little laughs when they made mistakes. So that relationship is going well.
Yeah, totally. See if week 8 actually happens. I don't know. Yeah, that's the kind of game I would be really. And even the week before, having to go to overtime to win against the Colts, they're just so the Chargers. God. Ugh.
They'll make the playoffs again as a wild card, I'm sure.
How do you
Maybe.
think that relationship's going to end with Gordon and the Chargers? Do you think he'll be traded?
The peanut gallery has clearly been drinking over here. They want the Chargers to trade for Eli Manning as like an
As a
ultimate
secure,
joke.
as a secure
as Philip Rivers'
backup.
security blanket. As
That
his
might be a good
handcuff.
trade.
They've already got Saquon Barkley. I don't think they need Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
So. But I don't know, man. I feel bad for Melvin Gordon. I feel bad for the running backs that have no leverage and no protection. I'm glad Ezekiel Elliott got taken care of, and now look at the Cowboys are, I think, probably the best team in the NFC. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to go well, but I also don't know if he'll ever play for the Chargers again.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he returns. I don't know. It's a toss-up for me because I feel like he could get value out of either situation if he shows up for 8 weeks to end the season and he impresses. Because I don't know if teams think he's a top-tier running back like a Zeke or a Le'Veon Bell, who did a similar thing last year and still got the contract. I don't think
Yeah.
Gordon's going to get quite that contract. So I don't know if holding out serves him well.
I think
But-
he's pretty good, man. I know he's not seen that way, but I think he can be very valuable.
Yeah, I think I think you're right, Brian. I think that the situation with Bell, if he didn't get a $61 million contract from the Jets, I think a lot of the running backs would have refrained from holding out. But they saw that he sat out a year, kept his body healthy and in reasonable shape, and he got paid. And I think Gordon's really going to press it. I think he is going to show up in La Casa or wherever they play. I mean, wherever they practice, I should say, their offices, and I think he's gonna force them to either release him or trade him, because they have to do one or the other once he shows up, because then he's ready to fulfill his contract, and then it's really in the hands of the Chargers, and I don't think they have an idea of what they really want to do. because they haven't tried to try to ship him to another place, and that's when it really comes down to you can't put him on the exemption list because now he's ready to work.
Yep.
So you either have to put him on your roster or you have to release him, and it's really going to be in the hands of the Spanos family. And 9 times out of 10, they'll choose the wrong way to
they make
solve
wrong
this
decisions,
problem.
For sure. Yeah.
I guess my thing with him a little bit too is he's had an injury history,
Yeah.
missing multiple games the majority of his seasons. So that's a thing that scares me a little bit about his long-term viability as a running back as he goes into his late 20s. So I don't know.
Who do you guys know who the running back is for the 49ers?
They have Breda,
Matt Breda.
and they have a second back that splits carries with him.
Okay.
Montaz.
Because I'm just trying to think. Like I was racking my brain for what some good fits might be for a Melvin Gordon type player, and a team like the 49ers who are off to a 2-0 start, probably a hotter start than. Well, their schedule's been kind of easy with the Bucs and Bengals the first couple weeks, but they also have Jimmy G back. Like I think they could potentially be the real deal. If you added a player like Melvin Gordon to that backfield, then the 49ers may become a legitimate playoff threat in the NFC. I could see that being a team that might want to trade for a guy like him. I don't know. The 49ers are they're one of the teams that I don't know about yet, like them and the Bills. I just want to see kind of what they do next, and I'll be interested to see how they play against the Steelers this week. I think this is a good time to get them first full week back with no Big Ben, and I don't know. The 49ers may be my darling this year.
I'll tell you, Josh Allen is probably the best quarterback that nobody really talks a lot about. He impressed me. I watched him against the Giants last weekend, and man, he has that sense of when the pressure's coming to roll out of the pocket and then run with the football, or just put it right on the numbers to a receiver moving, to help them break off their route to help them out. And I was like, wow, this guy is really good. I was like, my God, they made a good choice. And I think that's how it is in the NFL now. I think you need to be a little bit of a runner, but you definitely have to have a good arm. And I agree with what you said earlier. I think they are going to make the playoffs because I think they're going to be the second best team in the AFC East after it's all settled and done.
Who's the other AFC playoff team then? The other wild card.
I think the team in Foxborough.
No. I mean like the other wild card.
Oh.
So
I'm
Buffalo.
Because if you already have Buffalo in one,
Cleveland,
Buffalo,
Los
Cleveland, or the Chargers.
I think it's going to be Pittsburgh.
You're joking, right?
No, I'm not.
What?
I think the trade
No.
for the trade for Kirkpatrick is going to solidify their defense to allow them to sneak in as a 9-7.
And who's going to play quarterback?
I don't think Mason Rudolph is that bad. I mean, all you have to do is just make the necessary throws. That I think. Come on, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl, so anybody can do it.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't know if the Steelers' defense this year is a top 5 defense in league history. You said 49ers are your darling. I think the Bills are my darling.
Okay.
As Thomas mentioned, I like Josh Allen a lot. They're still employing Frank freaking Gore at running back.
Yep.
But that guy still looks in really good shape, and he's, 33, 34 years old, so it's still impressive to watch him. And I always like the kind of the underdog, smaller market team, of course, being in San Diego.
Yeah, I like the Josh Allen Mountain West connection piece. We talk about, this podcast, we can bring in like some type of San Diego connection to anything we talk about. And I don't know, I always feel like someone from a conference like ours and a school like Wyoming, even though I have no affiliation to Wyoming whatsoever, they're a Mountain West team and like the underdog piece. And then he goes into the NFL and to have success. And yeah, I don't know, I have like, as an Aztec fan, a little bit of pride, someone from our conference going and, being a big-time NFL quarterback.
Yeah, that's so true because when Boise State upsetted Florida State,
loved it.
And all the commentators were like, boy, I can't believe, where did that come from? And I'm all like, have you seen Boise State? Like, they come into San Diego every 2 years and thoroughly work the Aztecs with their efficient offense and superior defense. it's like that's a quiet, good team, man. Good, great program. And I agree. I think there's a lot of good football, in the Mountain West. I don't think it's always once in a while. I think it's pretty consistent.
Aside from Nevada getting drubbed by 70 points to Oregon, it's been a pretty good start to the year for Mountain West football. And then Josh Allen doing it in the NFL is a nice little 2-0 start for him, too. So good things here.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on the NFL in week 2 before we transition to Pods talk?
Finbar says that I love all San Francisco teams. I'm not just trying to get brownie points with the in-laws, all right? It has no effect. Just because the only NFL apparel that Alyssa owns is 49ers, she really doesn't care about them at all. So I'm not winning any points by saying that the Niners are my darling pick. Hey, yeah, John Lynch, San Diego connection.
There you go.
And then Melvin Gordon's going to be their running back. So I've already made the deal. I just called John Lynch. He said he's going to make it happen. So he's a big fan of the pod.
Love it.
I think the only really shock for me is really how I think what Brian said is you already kind of know who's going to be making the playoffs. It's really just going to be fighting for maybe a couple division titles, but the wild card is really where it's there's only maybe like 2 or 3 teams on either side that are going to actually be a contender.
I do feel after 2 weeks this year there's less parity than there has been in previous years. That's my initial thought in watching a lot of the action.
But one thing that's going to be tough for the Survivor League is that I just think there's a lot more bad teams than there have been in the past. So, I mean, maybe that's good because there's a couple of good teams, and if they're playing against one of the bad ones, then you just follow that around. But there's so many games against teams that you just have no clue about because they're both pretty bad. And there's a handful of really good teams at the top, and yeah.
I figure my only
out.
tough decision in Survivor will be when the Jets play the Dolphins. Like, man.
You're going to have to pick someone besides who's playing the Dolphins?
Yeah, it's going to take this thing 12 weeks.
That's the time you're
to
calling.
land a winner.
What's the longest you've ever been in?
The longest I've been is actually the one where I was down to me and another person, and it was, I want to say, either week 14 or 15.
Oh, my gosh. That's
And
a long ways.
at that point, the league I was in was probably worth like $2,000 to $2,500. And I forget, this was like 8 years ago. I picked the Broncos at home against the Raiders, who were like 3-10 at that point, and the Raiders win on the road, and I lost out on that chance.
That's pretty brutal.
At some dough. So it's a lot of strategy. It's a good amount of luck. And just a lot of anxiety, which makes it a good thing.
I just want to live another week, that's all.
All right. So we are down. We've cut out about a quarter of the crew.
Yep.
I hate to see it. Lost a few friends and cousins, but that's just the way it goes around here.
Yep. We lost to Conroy.
Yeah.
Not any relation to
No.
Thomas, but from my Conroy family.
But I am wearing black for that occasion.
We're all black
one
here on episode 10.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't even coordinate that. That was unintentional. And our 2 Peanut Gallery fans are wearing black as well. So apparently if you want to go, oh my gosh. Derek Fisher coaches the WNBA team.
Does he? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he coaches the LA Sparks. Speaking of WNBA, they wanted us to talk about the WNBA playoffs. Both WNBA semifinals are 2-0 right now. I think the Connecticut team is up
The Sun.
2-0, the Sun. And then the Sparks are down 2-0 in their series. But Derek Fisher is their coach. That's exciting. I like Derek Fisher.
He's got to be the first NBA, WNBA coach in history.
Probably. I hope he's the coach, or else I'm just going to sound so stupid.
Michael Cooper coached for years.
But he wasn't an NBA head coach, was he?
No, a WNBA.
Okay.
Yeah, Thomas
Oh,
is
okay.
saying the first person to head coach both the NBA and WNBA. Probably Derek Fisher. That's some WA trivia for you. WNBA trivia.
Don't worry.
If someone in the
wrong,
comments-
I'll cut it out. If
Yeah.
you're right, I'll post it.
3 people said, I'll see you next week.
Yeah. And we're out. We have officially jumped the shark.
All right. As this conversation continues to
Yes.
become a train wreck, we'll we'll
Yes.
talk about our San Diego Padres.
Yeah, Pods, baby.
Oh man, this is it's been an interesting season. A lot of high hopes early on,
Yep.
and slowly, kind of became a mediocre team, or we're around that mark most of the time. And then injuries, and get to September, we know we're not a playoff team, so we're seeing them bring up a lot of guys.
Yep.
So a little bit tougher to watch here than as opposed to earlier in the year.
Yep.
But still, a few silver linings. Most notably, a few days ago, Dinelson Lamet, 14 Ks. He's got some stuff.
Yeah, he does. He's a guy who coming into the year was a big question mark. I mean, everybody knew he has major league stuff, but coming off of his surgery and just kind of wondering what type of shape he's going to be in, and some guys come back stronger than ever, and some guys come back and just can't really find it again. And he struggled a little bit at the beginning of this season, and he's really dialed it in, and I think he's cemented himself as a for sure rotation piece next year. He had those 14 strikeouts in 6 innings. He threw a ton of pitches, which has been a big thing for him this year. He throws a lot of pitches, but you're going to get that when you're striking a lot of guys out. And he just definitely has major league stuff, and I think between him and Paddock and Garrett Richards coming back, we have the makings of a pretty decent rotation for next season.
I agree. I mean, we've seen a lot of arms and
Yeah.
a lot of positive, not a ton of consistency. So that's something that, you hopefully iron out during the offseason and in spring training a little bit. But I like that we at least seemingly have some options. Do we still need to acquire an arm?
I think so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Mackenzie Gore has a chance to come in and be a fourth or a fifth starter for you, kind of the way Paddock was this year. Like, get him in and put him in a position where he can, learn on the major league staff and not have to take the brunt of all the work. But then if you go out and get a Thor or a Cole or somebody like that, man, you're talking about a potential playoff team next year. I say that every year.
I've already gone on the record saying we're winning the division, so.
Winning the division.
Yeah,
Wow.
I said it like
you
6
never heard of
months
the
ago.
Dodgers or what?
I have, but obviously not this year, but
Oh, jeez. This guy. I like it though.
I had to.
We got to
With
celebrate.
all the hype for the last couple of years,
Yep.
the acquisitions in the off season.
Are we gonna? If the Padres, I mean, we're still gonna be doing this next year
Oh,
at
yeah.
this time. But if the Padres win the division, can we do a champagne spray
Absolutely.
here? You think they'll let us do
Absolutely, I
it?
will coordinate that.
All right, perfect.
Speaking of such celebrations, I posted that picture from a few years ago of us
Yeah.
with the snack DM.
Yep.
I'm gonna make that happen somehow, some way here on the
All right, it's gonna sit
on the
right
pod. Maybe
Perfect.
Super Bowl week.
here. Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Anywho.
Thomas is like, "What are you guys talking about?"
Oh no, I saw the photo. That thing looked. I remember when you guys actually posted it a long time ago.
Yeah. That was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like your mom had a lot to do with that
She
too,
did.
and Danielle.
A couple other
Yep.
friends.
Yeah,
So
that
we'll,
thing.
we'll coordinate something.
Yep.
Bring it
How,
back.
how long did that stay in the old office before it was actually all gone?
I don't think it was ever finished.
Yeah, that thing
Okay.
was.
I
it
think
it was
it
beefy. There
Stuck
was a lot
around
of-
for a night
Yep.
and probably got thrown in the dumpster.
Yep.
I know all the guacamole was consumed though.
Finbar says, "You guys don't know anything. Give Bob a mic right now."
Yeah. Well,
He's
he
got
wants a
fans.
WNBA talk. That's
Yeah.
why.
Finbar's
Does he have
big on the
any-
WNBA
Does he have
talk.
any analysis to end the show here?
You got any analysis? Hey Bob, why don't you come over here for a second? Oh, come on, you gotta come. The fans are requesting you by name. Hello, mother. We got another fan.
Got the
Man.
Vilvin crew in town.
All right, if you come over here,
Yeah.
then you gotta just talk into this mic. And that's the camera, but you can look at Andy or
So
Thomas. Or,
your first impressions on this podcast?
Oh, I
Is
love
it
the
watchable?
podcast. And some of my favorite fans are out there listening. Finbar. I think the world of that guy.
How much did you pay him this week?
His usual fee.
you got any? Who you picking this week in your Survivor?
I'm taking Dallas. I left out New England only because that's a divisional game, and as bad and as high as the numbers are, I just try to stay away from divisional games because those teams know each other so well, and you just never know what's going to happen. Kind of like your pick of Denver and Oakland. Denver was a prohibitive favorite. Oakland goes into Denver and beats them. Divisional rivalries are so tough to pick in the NFL. But Thomas's idea of Miami, anybody that plays Miami, is a pretty good strategy. You just got to stay alive in the survivor pool.
Just got a tough one when the Jets play them.
Yeah, it will be a
Go
challenge.
find another game to pick then.
Good stuff.
Finbar says Della Don MVP. I think that's WNBA
That
talk
is
too.
the WNBA.
All right.
No, I always had fun with Brian when the WNBA started, trying to name the mascots of the WNBA teams. So every Sunday we would look at the newspaper and I'd say, okay, I'm going to give you this name. You tell me what team it is. And it's virtually nobody can go through those and know who they are. But always a fun exercise to do that.
Yeah, and then there would be like the Soul. I think that was Phoenix's team, and you start to remember that the Suns are the NBA team, and then the Soul.
Right, they kind of connected some of the NBA and some of the WNBA teams.
Seattle Storm,
Yeah.
And the Liberty, and
New York Liberty.
Houston Comets. Cynthia
Yeah,
Cooper,
Rockets coming.
Cheryl Swoops.
It was
I
still-
knew all the players
was-
back in the day. I could probably name about 5 currently.
It was still pretty tough to do.
The Pride, right? Isn't the Pride one?
I don't know.
is that a team?
I think so. I'm not sure.
All right. Next week we'll have some real life WNBA talk because I'm gonna go look it up and I'm gonna see if I can name all the teams. Apparently I can't because the Pride are winning. You got any final thoughts before we kick you out?
No, I think it's good. Again, I'm hanging in the Survivor week all the way. And,
Oh.
don't know how I'm going to do it, but it's week to week, and I'm going to survive
There's
week to
like
week.
a-
You can't look too far ahead because as soon as you do, you're out.
It's like a 20% chance of Vilvin is going to come away a victor in this survivor pool.
I like those odds.
All right, beers on Bobo
Thanks,
if he
guys.
wins the.
Thank you, Senior Vilvin. All right, gents, that was fun. Thanks
Yeah.
for doing it again, and thanks to all the Vilvins for the support.
Hi,
We-
Nikki.
We will catch you next time. Thomas and Brian, always a good job. Andy signing off. We'll see you next time on the Best Coast Sports Connection.